Live from the Talking Joe Studios. It's Talking Joe.
You seem normal.
Hey. Welcome to Taking Joe, actually. There we go. I was going to stick that on there. Talking Joe with me, Mark, and we are here once again with a sketchbook special. Today we are going to be talking to Jon about his G.I. Joe themed sketches, which we talked about a little and previewed and trailered last time. So that's what we're going to do. It's sketchbook time.
Sketchbook, here's my sketchbook. I can show it to you if you wanna have a look. Sketchbook, here's my sketchbook. And now I will stop this song.
Because I love jingles so much, here's one to introduce the man of the hour. It's Jon.
Jon Thurmond is coming on the show today with Best Be Behaved.
Hey, Jon.
I tell you once again, Mark, again, it's amazing. I have a theme song with you all. I appreciate that so much. It's amazing.
It's my privilege. Good to have you back on. I was so looking forward to our next chat that I thought just have to cram it in. Never mind all of this. Spending time with the family. They can push them aside. Let's get you on. But who is joining us today to look at your sketches? I really want to talk Joe with you. It's a real American Tim.
Hello. Hi, Jon. Hi, Mark.
Hello.
Hiya, Tim.
Hello, audience.
Good to have you back, looking at some art and specifically Jon's sketchbook. And Jon, I think you sort of held it up and teased me with it. You've actually got your sketchbook, the physical sketchbook in front of you. Is that right?
I do. This has been my pride and joy for, as I said, I started it in 2010.
Let's do that.
So, 10 years of conventions and a lot of fun and making a lot of friends and having a lot of misadventures along the way, getting some amazing art.
It's just it's literally this sketchbook that you'll take to every con with you, and has been the one that's been gradually filling up. So is your routine that you'll sort of generally take it with you, leave it with a person, or stay with them if they're one of the people that works quickly and
right. It's funny. It's one of those conversations I've had with people over the years. Do you do loose sketches to try to get a lot and put them into a binder somewhere, or do you do a sketchbook? I've always enjoyed the sketchbook from the standpoint that I love when artists are flipping through it and going, "Oh man, wow, you did that," or "Wow, who is this?" or "You got so and so." And I think that it's kind of a one-upsmanship. Sometimes they're like, "Hey, what can I do to be cooler than this one?" Or "Hey, I really want to do something because my friend did it," or I can go to somebody, "Hey, they did something for me. Would you be interested?" I've always liked it, but again, you got to figure out what works for you, because there is the disadvantage if you hand it to somebody and they take a day out of a 3-day convention to do a piece. No, that's the risk, But I've also found over the years, when I first started, had to run everywhere and get everything I could. It wasn't a success if I didn't get 5 or 6 sketches in a weekend. Now, if I get one a day, I'm good with that. It's more about seeing people, talking to creators, seeing my friends, hanging out, and just perspective, right? Age. I still get super excited for what I do get, but it's not I don't have to don't necessarily have to fill this book up in a certain period of time anymore. Like I thought I had to when I first started.
Yeah, I'll often have 2 sketchbooks that are my G.I. Joe sketchbook and my G.I. Joe sketchbook, and then if I'm leaving it with somebody, then I'm not preventing myself from collecting anything else for that day. Yeah, sometimes you kind of have to make a decision like, who am I gonna what am I gonna prioritize, knowing that I might not see that sketchbook back again until the end of the day or whatever. But the one-upmanship is a very good point, and top tip for people who go to conventions and with their sketchbook, try and make sure that your first couple of sketches are primo, set out strong. Just like if you're doing like a sponsorship thing at work, and you're sending out that link to to sponsor you for your marathon or whatever, make sure you get a couple of really generous people for the first couple, and then you're like the fifth person going in, whatever. You go, okay, I'll chuck him a $5. Oh, 20 quid. If I don't give them really good sponsorship, I'm just gonna like a complete tightwad. Similar kind of theory.
Yeah, absolutely. But again, I think it's as we talked about a little bit in one of the, I know we've done a couple shows now together, which I appreciate. One of the, I think it's the second one, we talked about con preparation, or as you're looking, I think part of that is doing research. If you don't know who certain creators are, most of the creators in my book have not worked on G.I. Joe. Because let's face it, that's a pretty finite pool of people. For a sketchbook that size, I could, if everybody was living and available, I could probably get it filled up with their stuff rather quickly. So if finding other people or finding weird connections, like I have a piece from somebody that worked on a G.I. Joe fire coloring book of some type, I think it was, or some PSA thing that only existed in the Chicagoland area. Like, it's that kind of.
I just got that on eBay. This is the Devil's Due G.I. Joe fire safety comic book, not a coloring book.
Maybe that's what it is.
I have it. Geez, if it was, it's down. It's 15 feet below where I'm sitting on a coffee table. I went on a little spree of eBay obscure G.I. Joe comics.
That's probably what it is. Again, it was one where somebody told me, he's like, "Oh, this guy worked on this fill in the blank that this joke thing that I'd never heard of." Oh, that's cool, and he knows the characters and enjoys the property. But yeah, I think doing that research and figuring out. But too, what we were talking about, Mark, if I know if I'm going to leave it with somebody, I'm probably going to leave it with a creator that I've not met, or that I don't have some experience with. If they're going to say it's going to take a couple hours, do I do that, as opposed to it's going to be all day? If it's somebody that I've never met anywhere at a show and I may not see them again for a while, I'll take that risk in terms of leaving it with them.
Yeah, good call. Okay, so let's jump in, and do you want to set this up? So how did you go about curating this little list of that you're sharing with us today?
This was incredibly challenging, Mark. As I told you before we got started, I've got 10 years worth of sketches. I've got several pages, covers, some loose pieces as well. So the first several pieces that I want to share are in my sketchbook. So these are things I've collected since 2010. And then the last couple are self-explanatory, but or actually one of them I'll probably have to explain a little bit. The last one will make sense. But yeah, but this first bit though, these are all pieces that are in the book that I've been getting for the last many years.
Excellent. Okay, let's go.
So this was one of the this was very early, 2011. So probably like the second or third convention I went to. This artist is Daniel Govar. Some of you listening or that have seen that in and around may know Dan. Dan is typically known for his fantasy pieces. He does a lot of amazing work with Lord of the Rings style and nymphs and wood fairies and all that kind of great stuff. But I had found Dan through DeviantArt. I used to be a very active member there and was always looking for new artists. And I found Dan's work. He had done some redesigns for Aquaman and some things he had submitted to DC. And I thought the visual was so stunning. So I went to Dan at a local convention here in Richmond and introduced myself and showed him my sketchbook. And he's like, "Man, I love G.I. Joe as a kid. But I've never drawn a G.I. Joe before." And I'm like, "Hey man, I just really love your style. Like, what do you think works?" And I gave him my reference book and he's like, "I think Snow Job would be fun." So this started initially as just a black and white piece. And I loved it. I just went crazy when he handed it back to me because he really just a unique take, I think, in terms of what he's doing and readjusting the ski.
Yeah.
Fast forward to the next year, he was at another show here in town and it was fairly slow. And he had asked me to go find somebody. He had done a sketch, and one of the time lately we've talked about erasing pencil marks or not. So he asked me to go find the guy and ask him, "Hey, do you want Dan to erase these pencil marks?" So when I got back, he's like, "Hand me your book," and he took my book and he started taking his watercolors and just started dribbling and dabbling and then finished it up with the way I think he wanted it to look. So I think it's one of my favorites. I'm still just blown away every time I look at it. It tends to get a lot of oohs and ahs because, again, in person, just I think the balance and everything, it's stunning. I absolutely adore it.
So in color, warms and cools are a major division. Warms are red, orange, yellow. Cools are blue, purple, green. And in convention sketches, Copic markers have become big, and a lot of artists will get warm grays and cool grays. And what that really just means is it's a gray with a little bit of blue in it, or a gray with a little bit of yellow in it. So that the shadow or the ground looks like watercolor, but it does match whether it's Copic or watercolor in his bandolier and his beard and his gun, his rifle. Those all have a little bit of yellow in them. And then everything on the rest of his costume, that looks like a marker based on how the brush, like the tip is moving, like on his knee, but it may be a brush with hairs, and that has a little bit of blue in it. And sometimes when you look at a piece shaded this way, your eye starts to trick you, and you sort of think it's actually color or full color. But this is a really nice separation and a really unusual angle, and a really great story and personality moment.
Yeah, for sure. And what is the actual? This is getting super technical now. But what is the texture of the paper like in your book?
This is a what a pro art brand. So I guess comparable to Canson. It is a $10 or $12 8.5 mile or 9x12 sketchbook you could pick up at any art store or online.
Is the paper has a little bit of tooth to it, right? It's not
just a little bit,
not a smooth paper. It's not shine.
Right.
Okay, cool. I love this, and I just love this expression. Is the sort of the texture that's conveyed in the beard and the hood. It's it's
Govar hasn't drawn comics, or has drawn comics.
He's done some comics. I don't necessarily know any. He's not a DC or a Marvel guy necessarily. I know he just did it was on a Kickstarter about endangered animals, and so it was all painted set pieces with elephants and big animals of all types. Again, Dan does a lot of what I really call it that fantasy realm. That's really what he's kind of known for. And again, gotten to be a good friend over the years. And what I appreciated was that once I got the snow job, he's probably done 15 to 20 more Joe pieces over the years. And because people, in our community, somebody saw it. Hey, where'd you find that, or how'd you get that? And so he's got a small but great pool of Joe art out there. And because he grew up a fan, and in fact, he told me, I think it was Firefly. He used to have a Firefly figure sitting on his computer. So that was kind of fun to help him get reconnected that way.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because the way that people can share their art now online. If someone's done a great example of a particular character, people will notice it and go, "Hey, maybe I could get them to do me something as well." Absolutely. I know that we've even just between the two of us, that's happened a couple of times in the past. So cool. Shall I flick on to the next one?
Absolutely. So I tried. One of the things I do with my book is I try to do things that I really like, regardless. It's not just toys, not just comics. It's all different things. I was a huge fan of the Renegades cartoon, and at Heroes Con, I think this was 2013, Zealand Jones was there, and Zealand was one of the designers on Renegades. And so I met Zealand. We started talking, told him I was a big fan of the show, and we started talking about Clem Suave, who was the head designer on that show. Had a really lovely conversation about Clem, and anyhow, I asked him. I said, "Well, I love the Cobra Trooper design in that show," and I said, "Well, would you be interested in doing that? He said, well, I didn't work on that. He said, but Baroness was one of my main designs. And I said, okay, great. So as I stood there and he worked, he drew this amazing Baroness. He forgot the glasses. I'm okay with that because I just love, I love this simple, very animated design. And I also love the little note, we miss you, Clem. He got very emotional talking about Clem Suave. And for those of you that aren't familiar, Clem was the primary designer on that show. There were 2 other people up for that job. It was Michael Golden and Dave Johnson. Clem got it, and Clem died before the show's over. So if you see that show, it shows some places, or if you have it on DVD or what have you, somewhere. I think the second or third to last episode, it says in loving memory of Clem. But anyway, yeah, I love this piece. I just love the simplicity. I loved that style, and was really, really pleased. It was great to meet Zealand and be able to talk a little bit about his memories of the show and working with Clem.
So this was from memory and not from reference?
This was from memory.
And presumably you don't have Renegades reference in your reference book.
I do. I do. Yeah.
Okay.
I have it for Scarlet, the Cobra Trooper, the figure. I didn't think about Baroness because it was not necessarily one. But again, when I meet people and we start with somebody like Zealand, knowing he worked on the program, when he said, "Well, would you be cool with Baroness?" I'm like, absolutely. Like, what do you feel like drawing? And particularly, I didn't have reference, or he knocked this out in maybe 20 minutes or however long we stood there and talked. It was like I said, a lot of fun. And I've never seen Zealand in another show, so I'm really glad I picked it up when I did.
Yeah, great. It's those sort of encounters are great, and it's one of the nice things about sketchbooks is the variety as well, right, in terms of the pieces. One page to the next, it can be sort of poles apart. But yeah,
and sometimes I have to explain to people what they are, or even the creators are going like, "What's this?" or "What is this?" And not everybody knew Renegades very well, so I had to explain because they kind of look at, "Who is this?" Oh, it's from that cartoon.
It's fun to someone turns a page and they see an image that isn't a big deal immediately compared to the previous or the next page, but based on who did it or how unusual a drawing it is for them, or of course the story of getting the sketch, but
right,
there's something embedded in the property, the drawing, the character.
It's also funny how many inkers have asked me for scans of this one in particular. This one seems to be very popular for inkers to want to take a crack at. And unfortunately, I've never done it. I should do it. I've never done it, but I've had several ask me over the years about it.
You froze up for me a second, John. Can you just repeat that last?
That I've had several inkers over the years ask me about inking this one in particular. And I should have scanned it and had some people try it, but I just never have.
Thank you.
Yeah, presumably that's for them to just try out for fun and see what see what they can do with it. Right. Yeah, it's nice seeing all of this the construction underneath this as well, so you can really see the process that's gone into to bringing this together, but then with the much harder blue lines for the final. Right. It's sort of best of both worlds, really. Cool. Let's look at the next one.
Okay, so this is Tim Shin. Tim's actually here in Richmond. We don't live that far away from each other. In fact, I've taken my book over to him a couple times and just dropped it off at his house so he can do a piece or two for me. I didn't know Tim. We met several years ago at a Richmond show, and he had done some Renegades work for the G.I. Joe Collectors magazine. So the Collectors Club issue with, I believe, Snake Eyes, Roadblock, and Scarlet on the cover. Tim had done that work. Tim's similar in age to me and was a big Joe fan. In fact, later on, I went back and looked, and on DeviantArt, he had done several package designs, using that 80s style for characters that never got finished. So anyway, he had done I think a Trouble Bubble. Somewhere I saw a vehicle he'd done, and I'm like, dude, you got to do a vamp for me. We talked last episode. The vamp's my favorite vehicle, and so he did this super fun piece. I think it's self-explanatory what's going on here, but just a really, really fun piece from Tim. He's done some comic work right now. He's doing a lot of coloring for Neil Adams. For most of the covers you see from Neil Adams, he's doing the coloring work for him.
Okay.
So again, Tim's a great dude. Cranks this stuff out. I mean, so much Joe work, and I've got multiple pieces from him, but this one I love the angle, the visual. The colors don't come through great in my pictures. It's got a great grayscale to it, but again, just super fun and love it. I was thrilled when he opened it up and showed it to me. I just started laughing. It was perfect for me.
This is really unusual in that I don't think I've ever seen a convention sketch. I mean, I'm also not looking online for people's collections of convention sketches, but it's always a person. Or maybe it's Batman crouching on a gargoyle.
Yeah.
But
I will say with this one, Tim, I gave Tim my book overnight. So he took it home. He may have done it that evening, or he may have done it before the show started. I'm not sure which, but this was not, hey, he did it in an hour. This was when he spent a little bit of time with at some point. But yeah, I started kicking around the idea of trying to do, and I carry vehicle reference just in case, because I know some people did. I have one in a little bit that is comparable to that. But yeah, you're right. You don't see a lot of vehicles, but again, it was a overnight thing at least, and I'm really glad it's in there because again, I just think it's a really fun, a different take.
Oh, Polly, what have you done?
Yeah, or getting ready to do.
It's a lovely little scene as well. Like the immediate kind of, you immediately look at it and think, yeah, it's the vamp. That's a great shot as well executed, and then there's this whole sort of character moment happening there where looks like Polly's left a clutcher present down here in this corner, and he's getting his pistol ready out to shoot him, and Stuart breaks. No, it's it's lovely. I think it would be rare to have an artist that would have the confidence to say, yeah, I'll take on a vehicle as a con sketch. I think for most people a headshot, maybe a bust, maybe particularly if it's someone like Batman that most artists can have a go at drawing in their sleep. But for something like this, it's very unusual, very cool to see.
In the way that occasionally at a convention, a guest artist or someone in Artist's Alley is an animation designer, how often that it's much more likely that they're a character designer or a lead designer and not a prop designer. And it's on G.I. Joe, right? It's
right.
I mean, with Russ Heath in 82, 83, that wasn't so divided. But after he did his pass, it was definitely divided between character designer and prop designer.
Very cool. Yeah, and Tim Shin is one of these names that I see a lot in connection with G.I. Joe, but didn't quite understand the connection. His art of G.I. Joe is shared a lot on, I think, Comic Art Fans, and I've seen it pop up on eBay on those kind of things. So yeah, good to hear a bit more about him. I actually, before I knew our Tim, I kind of conflated the two of you a little bit because I know that you do like your Cobremva sketches and things like that, and I've seen these other sketches from Tim Shin. So there's a lot of a crossover there in the nameage on that Venn diagram. And don't forget that for people watching as well, if you want to comment, question, just type it away in the YouTube comment box, and we'll see those comments as they come through. Cool. I'll ping on to the next one, shall I?
Okay.
Fun.
This is Dean Kotz, who I think is one of the most underrated creators out there right now. I met Dean at Baltimore Comic-Con probably 5 years ago now, and I didn't know Dean's work. He was there under some type of publisher table. He wasn't on his own. He was just there. I don't know if he was just friends of his or what, but I look over and he's got some artwork on the table. And he had this Black Knight from Marvel that just blew my mind. And I'm like, who is this guy? I've never heard of him. I didn't. And again, he wasn't on the guest list. So typically if a convention, I'll start researching 2 months before, and I start looking for new creators that I don't know. And I'll try to find their work. If they've done any Joe stuff, like, I do my research. Dean was just this guy. And I start looking at his stuff and I'm like, holy crap, this stuff is unbelievable. And just a really soft-spoken, very just self-assuming, really, really nice guy. And so Dean did a couple of black and white pieces for me the first couple years. And one of the things I noticed is that it's the amount of detail he put in was just stunning. For what I was getting, I was absolutely thrilled. And I knew he was doing watercolor work. And so this was the third sketch I got from Dean. And I love Televipers. I tend to try to find more off the wall characters a lot of times because I just don't think they get enough love. I love the Televipers, and I gave Dean the reference and I said, just go crazy, whatever you, and he handed me this back and I was blown away. Didn't give him any direction other than I'd like him to be saying, I'd like something to come across the visor. Other than that, you do whatever you want, Dean. And this is what I got. I found the less direction I give, the better. It's what I've typically found. If I give somebody and he loves dead bodies, like all the different sketches. I will say a couple sketches I have from her. One of the others has a lot of bodies in it. A friend of mine got a Star Wars piece from it, had bodies all over. He loves drawing bodies, which is fine because I love the energy. And yeah, this thing it slayed me when I was so happy with how it turned out.
There,
it's wonderful. Did you what kind of your expectations? Did you know that you'd be getting this a scene like this, or were you thinking that maybe you might just get like a solo figure? Or
I knew I would get something. So I have and maybe some other time if I get to share some more down the road, I have a Cobra Trooper piece from him. So like old school version 1 Cobra Trooper, and it's several of them like marching through a bombed out city. That was the second piece. The first piece I ever got from him was Shipwreck, and it looks like Shipwreck on the boat in Indiana Jones. And there's like the water's all everything's going on, and he's got his anchor, like using it like a whip. I didn't ask for it. I just said Shipwreck. And then I actually have 4. I'm sorry, because I also have a torpedo, and torpedoes under the water, and there are mines everywhere, and fish and stuff, and he's just kind of bubbling through the water. So yeah, I mean, Dean's just got such an inventive mind, and Dean's fairly active on Twitter. You can find his stuff out there, and he's just constantly doing commissions and sketches and things. And again, did I expect this? Absolutely not. I figured I knew I'd get a Televiper and I'd probably get a body or 2. I kind of knew that, but no idea it would be this whole scene like this.
Excellent. And I think this piece actually was the one that prompted my brother to go and commission Dean something via the mail. So one of our joint sort of collecting interests is reinterpretations of the classic Marvel covers in the style of the artist, rather than trying to get a line for line recreation. And so he went for his reinterpretation of that cover, which has got Repeater in the front with the Viper sort of sneaking up on him. I'm pretty sure he saw this one on your social media and thought, yes, this is the guy to get something from.
The color, I don't mean impressionism like the art movement. I mean a general definition of the word. The color and the sort of like the end of the sketchbook line here creates such an impression. This isn't tight, right? This is really loose. And like that third Televiper in the background at the top of those stairs in front of all those buttons, that sort of dissociates in front of your very eyes, because there's just one purple, brush stroke and 3 blue brush strokes on the Televiper. And the color doesn't see, like around the middle of the two, the Televiper all the way to the right, like the color doesn't reach all the way to his head for that blue behind him. But the color and the sort of the impression of all of these lines adds so much to the cacophony of the scene and the story, right? Like these televipers are about to get out of here, or they're about to get overrun by 3 upset Joes, and these two planes in the background. When I read not monthly comic books from the major like action and superhero publishers, but when I read graphic novels from Fantagraphics or Drawn and Quarterly or an even smaller outfit, you see art like this more often. And I'd love to see a full Joe story like this, which doesn't have the traditional modern computer color approach, which doesn't have the sort of traditional American adventure style, penciling and inking. That does look like a sketchbook, but is a story with panels and pages, not just a single image, a pinup, not just a cover.
Okay, yeah, brilliant. What's up next? Here we go. This is a good one.
Okay, so this is the one I typically have to explain the most. Because
not to the two of us, but
not to the two of you, but most people say, why is Moon Knight in a G.I. Joe sketchbook? So for those of you that are watching now or later that aren't familiar, Larry Hama had originally pitched a book called Fury Force. I'm not going to get into all the details, but one of the characters was called Spook. Yes, thank you. So I got fascinated with the idea of, when I see Larry, I always try to get something that he doesn't do a lot of, if at all. When first time I met him, I got a Storm Shadow or Snake Eyes, but I was like, okay, I got to start thinking of out of the box, and I was like, you know what, this would be kind of fun, like the first version, because I love Commando Snake Eyes, and this just sounded like fun. So I, as we talked about before, I was driving in for one of my shows, and I'm fortunate that I get to hand in my sketchbook early. I don't always I'm not first because I'm hanging around, right? Like I'm available, but I always make sure I'm on his list. And so I handed to him, and he's like, what do you want? And I said, well, I would like Commando Snake Eyes and Spook. And he looked at me and he goes, I'm going to need reference for that. And I said, go, you're the only reference there is. And he, I love Larry's sketches because they're just so sketchy. I love the looseness in these. It's funny watching him over time too. I've got several pieces from him over the years, and it's interesting kind of watching how they change over time. I feel like he's gotten a little more precise in some ways, if that makes sense. And maybe it's based on character and what he really likes to do. I think again, people see this and they just don't understand. They don't know who Spook is. And that's for me, that's part of the fun is I want people to look at this and go, what in the hell? What is this? Like, what does this mean? It's always super fun. And as far as I know, I'm the only person that has a Spook sketch. If somebody else does, I'd love to see one, because I've never seen any of the other Fury Force sketches other than that one sketch that Larry did for that initial pitch.
Well, he did.
I've never seen it.
He did some vehicles, and he did a cross section of the base. He did a helicopter, the ice cream truck, cross section of the base, which ends up being a proto pit.
Right, but nobody has. I guess what I was saying to him.
Sorry, of course.
That nobody. I don't know anybody else that has gotten him or anyone else to do anything in that world.
Yes, of course.
Again, just because it was just something that's strange that would be fun for me. And that's what I love about the book, is that I can do silly things with it.
And it makes you think about the story potential there as well, of actually seeing this in maybe the ARA world, that
right.
This could be something. Plant that seed there for Larry.
I can imagine, unfortunately, that not happening, because Fury Force was pitched to Marvel, and Nick Fury's son is the Fury of Fury Force. Mm-hmm. And so could IDW, IDW has a relationship with Marvel because they publish all these artist editions, and they have a license for the Marvel Action line, the all ages comics. Do we all want to see this happen? Yes. Are like interested parties going to jump through some hoops and write up a contract? Maybe.
But if it's a new character that was created as a pitch for a book that never happened, then presumably Marvel doesn't necessarily own that IP.
That's true. Would Larry create a new character, sort of recreate a character that I think technically he owns? I think technically Larry owns Spook. Would he give that character to Hasbro in effect by putting that character in a G.I. Joe comic?
Interesting.
I guess it's sort of the closest analogy is him putting the Red Shadows, some of the Action Force characters in the comic. You know, they were sort of over here and already established.
Now, Tim, I think you might have been on the cusp of speaking to this, but I flicked to that image, and this image is sourced from back issue number 17. And underneath that image, it says over here, the scan of this ultra image is courtesy of teacher and writer Tim Finn, who is penning a comprehensive book on the 1980s, 1990s Joe. So thank you, Tim.
Thank you, Tim, because I probably printed off that very scan.
Do you want to add some context around that, Tim?
No.
Okay. Okay, very good. But I love it. And what was I going to say? Yeah, I think Larry often has a preferred way of working on his sketches as well, which is he likes a specific size to the sort of the card paper that he works on, and he'll often have it on a clipboard. He'll number it at the top as the requests come in. So I think most of the sketches that exist from Larry are kind of in that loose.
He doesn't get a lot of sketchbooks.
Format.
He doesn't get a lot of sketchbooks. But pro tip, if you're going to meet Larry Hama and you've not, black coffee will be your friend. Just taking him a cup of black coffee, because there's never enough coffee available for him. In my experience working with him, you can't go wrong with a nice cup of black coffee for him.
Larry also for a long time was only charging, was it $25 for?
20, I think it was 20. 20 when I met him like 10 years ago. We met him in 2009. I think it was 20. Yeah. And then it might have gone to 25. I think last I saw him, he was 40 a figure.
Yeah. And he has posted about this on Facebook where, and I think that price only went up maybe 3 years ago.
2 years ago. Yeah.
And, to the fan or convention goer who wants a more finished image, who wants ink, not just pencil, who wants some background, maybe who wants several characters, this style may not satisfy them. But Hama's thinking is he would much rather do many sketches,
20
many sketches,
right?
And make more people happy.
Right.
But also, I think he'd done some rough math, and that maybe he can make more money doing a lot of sketches for less money rather than a few sketches for more money. But after so many conventions of seeing all these pros next to him and across from him charging many times more than what he was, and I think to a lesser extent seeing some of his sketches after a convention show up on eBay for more than 20, he raised his price, and I think it's only 40, which is still really modest. It
was the 40 the last time that I was his handler for a show in 2018, I guess, and I think it was 2018. It's hard to, they all blur now, but the last time we had him up in Northern Virginia, it was 40 a figure at that point.
This should not surprise either the two of you, but for many years, Hama's signing at my store was our biggest crowd for an in-person guest.
Gosh. Yeah, and I think Larry as well, he if he has unclaimed sketches at the end of the show, he'll often put them on eBay. So I'm sure that he's aware that if he just wanted to make more money, that he could do that, because I think typically the eBay price sketches will go for significantly more than what he would charge on the day. So clearly the reason that a big reason that he's doing these and at the lower rate is for the fans rather than just the cash grab. which is nice.
And in fact, he has kind of a policy of not doing sketches after a convention. He's not a commission artist. Right. He's a working freelancer who writes scripts for comics publishers and does pencil layouts for comics publishers.
Yeah, and he's also not keen on the idea of his sketches being finished either. That they should be, that is the artifact. His sketches, and it's not intended to be inked and coloured and things like that. That this is the finished product, as it were. Which is fine if that's the way he views it. Although I have seen them. I have seen and been involved with a couple of occasions of having inks on a Hammer sketch, and to me it looks nice, but I know Larry's less keen on that concept. Okie dokie. Let's skip ahead to this one.
Okay, so this is the late great Jeremy Dale. I was very, very fortunate to get to know Jeremy over several years. For those of you who don't know, Jeremy did some of the, I call them B issues, the 2-pack figure issues for Hasbro, so 21B and what have you. So he did some work with Larry. But Jeremy, we met Jeremy in 2010 at Baltimore. His wife Kelly was with him, and my son was 10 at the time, and looked at his portfolio and told him what to work on. And Kelly, Jeremy's wife, actually gave my son a pen to go back to the hotel room and ink a Star Wars sketch he'd been working on. And so he went back the next day and showed him the sketch, and they just continued to encourage him, which I always appreciated. And I have a soft spot for Dr. Mindbender because I just think the costume is weird, and he's just a weird dude. And I love the whole premise of him being a dentist. And so I actually was at a Free Comic Book Day in North Carolina the year that this was done. I handed Jeremy my book. I said, I'm going to see you in a few weeks at Heroes, Dr. Mindbender. And he goes, what do you want? I go crazy. And he gave me this back. For those of you who didn't know or don't know, Jeremy passed away several years ago. Way too young, just a super sweet guy. And he had his own series called Skyward, which Kelly actually did a Kickstarter for later. And there's a bound edition out that got finished. They brought Shannon Gallen in to do pencil the last issue to make it a full story. But I miss Jeremy at every show I go to. He was the best. He was great with fans. He was a true comic book fan. Like, he knew about every character. He could talk to little kids about Spider-Man. He could talk to adults about fill in the blank. He just knew a lot, and he was a fan himself, but he was a real Joe fan. It hurt his feelings a lot. He got a lot of grief from some people about his work. And it makes me sad because, again, I think he was a real talented guy working in it's a challenging thing to be doing some of the stuff he had to do, but got several Jeremy pieces. This is one of my favorites. So I love that close up of the teeth and the neck. And but again, I will say this was not an overnight thing. I gave it to him in, early May, and I saw him a month later. So I don't know how long he worked on it, but really, if you're not familiar with Jeremy's work, go seek some out and just appreciate what he did, because he was one of the best.
Tim, is Jeremy someone that you've encountered over the years?
I have not, and it took me a long time to connect him to his specific G.I. Joe work, because those comics didn't have credits.
Uncredited, right?
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. There's a couple years where both the cross cells, the small folded catalogs that have that year's toys or that wave's toys, but that also had a comic, like a 4-page comic before 25th anniversary. And also with 25th anniversary, there's several years where either the actual printed object itself or the packaging says comic written by Larry Hama in a burst, and it doesn't credit colorist, letterer, inker, penciler, editor. And so it took me a while to connect him, but I really like his GI Joe work, and I think John makes a good point that doing an issue set between two established issues, Larry's writing it 25 years later, different paper, different color, different lettering, obtaining it is different. You're getting it with two action figures at a toy store. Just everything about it feels different. But it would have been neat to see him move over to some kind of sort of mainline GI Joe work, like a monthly issue of the series. This is a fun reminder that even though GI Joe is spies, and I'm talking about this specific image now, even though GI Joe is spies and creeping around, there is still a little bit of superhero in GI Joe, like in character design and in musculature. I think realistically, Dr. Mindbender would be lithe. He'd be the Cyclonus to Cobra Commander's Galvatron. But it's also when he's cut, right? It's like, oh, there's also some like professional wrestling in GI Joe. I don't mean because of Sergeant Slaughter. Sure. I mean because of how silly and crazy a lot of the. It's like, no, this is a super villain, right? Like he has a cape and he has a belt buckle on his thigh. Just because, it's like, because every day is Halloween when you're in Cobra.
Tim, you mentioned that not making that connection. So I actually own a page from 21B. And as I recall, and it was many years ago, I picked that up. I believe that Jeremy told me at least that issue, all he did was they scanned right from the pencils. So I will try to get, I'll find it later and send it to you. Or I can share it later at some point, but I have a really, really great page with Scarlet in the background, the jetpack and the whole nine. I love it. And again, it was interesting talking to him about those, working on that book and working on all those books. But again, I think Jeremy got a lot of grief that was not deserved. And if you've never met it, if you had a chance to meet him, just the energy he had and the excitement about comics in general, not just his own property with Skyward, but everything he did. And he just was an absolute joy. It was an absolute joy.
I have wondered with those pack-in comics that were reproduced just from the pencils, was that an issue of time? Was that an issue of money, that the page rate wasn't very high? And so the artist would say, if I just pencil these that much tighter, we can color the pencils directly because it wouldn't be worth my time at this page rate to also ink it. Or if the editor said, just pencil.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it was something that that Devil's Due and IDW were doing to some extent around about that era as well. That on occasion they would be working directly from the pencils and try and save on the cost of additional inks as well.
Yeah,
and to your point about what Jeremy was doing being difficult, Tim, as well. I was thinking just in terms of putting yourself up there with the legacy of issue 21. Let's do another issue that's set in between the panels of 21. Essentially, that's a hell of a thing to try and live up to as well. Sort of bit of pressure.
There's that Ron Wagner prologue that Devil's Due published exclusively in a collection of the Snake Eyes Origin miniseries. That's one of the rarer G.I. Joe stories. I think it's 6 pages, and no one ever talks about that. No one ever talks about that, sort of good or bad. I think just sort of no one knows about it. But there is another example of someone.
Wrong.
There's
another.
See
if I could find it.
There's another example of someone whose work gets placed right in that sort of legacy or that era. I like it when on the bottom of the sketch it says Heroes Con. I like it when the artist writes down what or where the show is. Yeah,
I love this effect here as well. The I guess it looks like it's probably Copic markers or something, but in that background of that Mindbender sort of close up, just no inks there at all. It's all sort of being done with the color. It's a lovely background of effect. Cool. Next one. Let's see.
Okay, so speaking of almost like vehicles, this is a Brian Shearer piece. Brian, thank you. Yes, that's why. So I will tell you the story behind this one. I've known Brian for quite a while now. I've had a lot of misadventures with him outside of conventions, and I gave him my book, and I said he had done a really cool cover with Deep Six. So I knew he could draw big and clunky, and I said, "Hey, I would love to have snake armor in my book." And he's like, "Okay." And I had the reference. He's like, "I don't know what I'm going to do with it." Well, if you've seen him at conventions, Brian tends to sit next to Shannon Gallant. They're together a lot because at the time they were the pencil and inker on the book. And anyway, so I guess at some point Shannon says something like, "Why don't you just make it look like they're putting stickers on them?" I think that's how, as I recall this conversation going. So I went off and did my thing, and I come back and I get this piece, and it's hysterical. And I, again, wouldn't have thought of it. I thought, well, maybe snake armor, snake's doing something, but this was incredibly funny. And yeah, I think Tim's response is, I've gotten that quite a few times. People were, again, the less direction I give, I feel like the more fun people have, and the better the piece I get back.
This is, of course, all these convention sketches, don't exist in an actual canon, G.I. Joe story moment, whether animation or comics or toy package art. Sometimes when they're funny, they sort of exist in the universe of like us all having fun with G.I. Joe in artwork that doesn't need to carry the weight of like actual G.I. Joe story. This feels sort of halfway between like a scene from the comic or the cartoon, but also halfway like the imagination of a kid with the toys, right? Because it's like, okay, we all who had the snake armor, I guess my brother, not me, put that label on or chose not to. And in the universe, in the story of G.I. Joe, somewhere there's a factory, there's a Mars factory, and there's a stencil. And like someone on the assembly line is like spray painting red, and then the next piece, the next chest plate, right? And then the next chest plate. Or like there's a stamp, and then there's a stamp, and then there's a stamp. And then to have this be punishment or perhaps training or just a job for some kind of, it's like, oh, this is a Cobra soldier who like might make Techno Viper, or this is like Engineer Viper, right? Track Viper or something. Because this isn't fixing, this is finishing. And this isn't like an assembly line. This is more like how a kid would do it. This is almost like sort of on the left side and the right side are in the invisible hands of a child, right? And this is like on your floor. And in the story, it's like, I'm going to have my guy finish making the snake armor for Destro. That's so much fun.
Yeah, I mean, it's a thing that is, for those of us, growing up with the toys, all of these toys, here we go, the moccasin, for example, we applied all of these stickers all over these things, and clearly for Hasbro that's a cost saving measure. Really, it's instead of having a complicated factory process or having it done by hand by somebody prying it to be shipped out, ship it without the stickers, have the kids, apply all these themselves. But it's also a very clever move in terms of, that you're getting into all of the detail as you're applying these details, these stickers, and you're exploring all of these teeny tiny, aspects of the vehicle, which you might not noticed on just a simple looking at it and glossing it over, and you're making a very tangible physical connection to your toy, and it's not just the memory of, you know, playing it or having it on the shelf, or it's, you know, it's about it's also the making of it and your hand in the creation. It's you know, it's quite a sort of a powerful connection then that process creates with you. Sorry, a bit of a tangent there.
The impression of that there's a long line of these or many rows of these with a little bit of gray on the far left and the far right.
Just this teeny tiny hint here in the background of these.
And a really nice detail that, can you zoom back into the main center snake? So, you know, on the black weapons, sort of elbows down, on the right sort of shoulder, right? Shearer has drawn with a whiteout pen, right? So he's put white lines on top of the gray marker to add a little bit of shine. It's happening too on the Cobra soldier's shoulders and his right glove.
Nice. Okay, what have we got up next? Oh, this, I like this one. Not that I don't like any of the others, but
this is my most recent edition, and this is obviously not in the sketchbook. Andrew Griffith, who I believe, if his issue is not out yet, it is going to be out sooner than later. Andrew has definitely been known more for Transformers, I think, over the last many years, but I met Andrew a few years ago at a Baltimore con. He runs around with Brian Shearer and Shannon Gallen, and kind of know each other. And but Andrew took part in the Creators for Comics auctions last April, May, whenever it was, and he had done a Scarlet with the jetpack that just blew my mind. And so I bid on the auction for the Joe character. I gave him 3 choices, and he's like, "I haven't read 21 in a while. I'll get back to you." And he did this just stunning. I believe it's cover quality. I absolutely adore it.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's quickly become one of my favorites. And interestingly enough, so Andrew now lives in Peru and wasn't able to send things for some time. He's now back in the States.
Oh, no.
And so and I knew that was the deal when I got it. What's funny though, is for my HR podcast, I have a listener in Peru and I had sent her a gift, and it got sent back to me with a sticker that said refused by country. So I didn't know to take offense at that or what the story was. So I contacted Andrew. I said, "Hey, Andrew, are you able to get stuff?" And he goes, "No, nothing's coming in. I can't get anything out." And so, like I said, he apparently came back to the States, I don't know, maybe 6 weeks ago with a suitcase full of artwork, commissions, and things he owed people, and just started sending them out. So, yeah, like I said, just this is something I'd gotten. I knew it was coming. It had been available or he had finished it last year, but I just did get it in hand about a month ago now, and was really, really, really happy with how it turned out.
So to hold the hand of someone watching this who isn't familiar or hasn't reread issue 21 recently, there we go. At the beginning of 21, Storm Shadow delivers the captured Scarlet to the castle on the claw. And then at the end of Silent Interlude, Snake Eyes and Scarlet are getting away, and she saves him, then he saves her on the claw. Can you go back to the black and white, Mark?
Yep.
It's interesting that the black is in the shadow of the mountain and not in the sky. Not good, not bad, just really interesting, because this cover would have a different feeling if all that space around the moon and above Scarlet were inked in. This has, this is playing a lot with symmetry because she's centered, even though she's not perfectly symmetrical, and the background's certainly not perfectly symmetrical. The claw is, and so much of her is that you think of this as a symmetrical cover. This also feels a little, and this might this is probably inadvertent. This feels a little religious. Like this feels a little bit like, like the Frank Quitely image of Superman with the sun behind him, right? Where he's sort of a Jesus figure, like he's sort of ascending to heaven or coming down to help us. simple humans. So I'm not interested in making deep comparisons between G.I. Joe and religion, but I look at this and I think a little bit of like stained glass or like religious iconography, where a character is standing or floating a certain way.
I was just say I found this, which I think is the image you might be referring to.
That prompted me to at least consider. I gave him 3 options, and based on that one, though, I was very curious to see when he said, "I want to do this." I know it'll be great.
So he colored this one with the jump that we're looking at right now?
As far as I know, he did his own colors on that.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah, looks like Copic.
Do you know, is he inking his own issues of G.I. Joe?
I don't believe so. I don't know for sure. And again, I know if it's not out yet,
I think it's gonna be
soon.
4 weeks.
It may be the next. Another month.
Not,
I knew it was coming.
It's not on the list for next Wednesday.
Okay. Well, I knew he had it, and I think he's had at least a cover or 2 lately. And so, yeah, again, it's fun to see him doing Joe after doing Transformers and robots for so long. It's nice to see him working on people.
We can have some confidence knowing that he'll draw really good vehicles.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, just seeing pieces like this. I saw this on social media. I think when probably when Andrew first shared it, and I thought it was amazing, and it gave me an enormous amount of confidence in his ability to do a very good job on the book. So on the basis of seeing pieces like this, really looking forward to seeing what he'll do actually on the insides. Cool. Did I have anything else? Or was that? Oh, here we go.
Okay, this is Robert Atkins, and if you guys remember, there was a digital card game 5 years ago, 6. Well, yeah, longer than that even. Battlegrounds, I think it was called. I don't even remember. I never played it, but Robert did a lot of the figure work. And they would scan straight from pencils. And so this is an 11x17 rock and roll, super tight pencils. And I have a rock and roll sketch in my sketchbook that I don't share with anybody because I absolutely abhor it. It's just multiple reasons. I have 2 sketches in my book that people don't. If you see the book, you can look at them and I'll explain the story. But Robert knew how mad I was about this other piece, and I was fortunate enough to get this. I got it at a Baltimore. He had it at a Baltimore con for me, and it's classic rock and roll. It's great. Yeah. It's fun, and I've seen the finished card, along the way. But again, it was just I'm really excited to have it too.
Okay, so just to clarify, this is not artwork for that card game.
Yes, it is.
This is not a convention sketch. Oh, you bought this at a convention.
It was a gift, but I got it. Yeah. He had a multiple, because he did several character designs or characters for the card game, and they would just literally, as I understand it, scan from that and then put whatever effects and things they do as the trading card. But yeah, this was the rock and roll for that card game.
The collar. 1982 collar.
Yeah. Oh, I love that collar.
That's a great face. When I think of Atkins, I think of his the precision of bodies, right? Like in space, of movement, like torsion and weapons. And I think of his storytelling, and those are just very attractive eyes. That's a very handsome face. That doesn't just feel like a comic book person who looks like an anatomically correct comic book person. That looks like a specific person.
Right.
That's great. And it isn't inked, so sort of the term like spotting blacks doesn't precisely apply, but this is penciled so tightly as if it were inked, right? So all the shadow under his bicep, right, under his, and his left thigh, the right thigh, Can we see the bottom half, Mark?
Yep.
Yeah. Oh, the boots. What a great drawing. And also, you get the sense that that's a heavy weapon, right? His pose suggests that he's,
Right.
He is holding it up and stabilizing himself.
I was listening to Robert talk on a podcast. It might have even been the Star Joe's podcast, John. And he was talking about the process that he was having for producing these cards, and I think it was he produced quite a large number of them for the game, and it was they're basically looking for all of the characters, all of the different versions, maybe even a couple of iterations of the different characters, so they could use different art for as they rank up or however it worked, and they asked him for these this kind of layout of just the character itself and not anything else, because then they would add on all of the rest of it, the finishes, the colors, the backgrounds, etc. And they apparently would go kind of leave some of the more the less powerful cards as slightly more basic, and then go all out for the the more powerful cards in the game, so they would just have more of a wow factor to those cards, representing their value and their power in terms of how they were used in the game itself. An interesting request, and finishing of the art.
Well, and I will say too, this is also an 11x17, so it is a really just a beautiful piece, display piece, because of the size and finish and what have you. But
in the way that Hasbro has made good use of the Dreamwave art of all of the Autobots and Decepticons from Dreamwave's More Than Meets the Eye miniseries, which was sort of an update of Transformers Universe, right? It's like the official handbook of the Marvel Universe, just shots of every character. Some of that art shows up like on the actual DVDs as licensing art, right? Because it's these like definitive versions of the characters. It would be great if Hasbro could redeploy this Atkins art either sort of in this version. I mean, you'd still want it to be darkened and in color, or the sort of finished versions from that card game. It'd be great to see these used across like, GIJoe.com and backpacks and stuff. I know there isn't as much G.I. Joe merch as Transformers, but I feel like sometimes Hasbro is scrounging a little bit to find, just a good drawing of Scoop. Like a good,
yeah.
It's like they've got plenty for Snake Eyes.
Yeah, I'd go beyond that. I'd love to see, I think, an art book where they just, collect all of that stuff all in one place, because for the likes of us comic fans who haven't been delving too deep into the mobile game, we won't have necessarily seen a huge amount of this art. So it'd be nice to have it in one place.
Maybe we can more realistically hope for a very small run convention sketchbook that Atkins publishes on his own. I
think that's more realistic.
and if it was just the pencils, that'd be great too.
Cool. I think this is the last one. There's one that somehow has dropped off the slides that I'll dig out.
I was going to say one of them. I figured I would say it's probably the most controversial piece I own.
Let's end on the controversy.
G.I. Joe controversy. That's the name of my G.I. Joe mobile game, actually. Just argue about Scoop.
Okay.
This is not it. There's another one. Yeah, I don't know where it went.
Yeah. I'll dig it out as the final thing.
Okay. We talked last time about pencils versus inks, and this is the cover to, I believe, Special Missions number 10, the IDW run of Special Missions. This is a piece by Shannon Gallant, and this is 8.5 by 11. Thank you. So this is he did his own inks on this, and so I'm fortunate to have these. I think it's kind of fun to see in the process. You can see a lot especially in the first one, there's little notes and what have you.
Yeah.
For what he's doing, but just silly when I first saw it. I was like, YMCA, okay, haha, Shannon, this is great. And, so and Spirit's just not into it. I think it's just a really fun piece, and I love the notes, Duke's notes for the holiday piece. And it's Snake Eye singing Silent Night, and it's marked out, and Scarlet and Lady J dueling banjos. For those of you that don't know Shannon, he's got a wicked sense of humor. Yeah. And typically if you say, I'd like X, he'll go nuts. Like the more nuts you let him go. And so I know he had a lot of fun working on these different special missions covers, and he did some really fun things with them. And I know when we talked about kind of that, what does it look like, or seeing process, it's really fun to see a creator in their own process for the whole piece, from beginning to end. And
so he printed the pencils as blue line onto a separate piece of Bristol and inked that, and so both these exist.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
This is a lot of fun.
I have them both in my collection, so yeah, they both exist.
I really like Gallant's art. I really like his storytelling. I love how long he was on G.I. Joe. I'd love it if he came back. I like it when he inks himself, and also when Shearer inks him. All of that said, I think the joke would be a little clearer if there were some background. I feel like we need to see some like Christmas lights hanging from the ceiling, or a banner behind them, or a tree. And I get it. Maybe I know I'm going into this really detailed. I get it. Just practice, right? This isn't maybe even the dress rehearsal. So right. Maybe that decoration isn't there yet. But I feel like you have to read the clipboard to get the joke, and that's okay. Sure. But when I think of covers that make me laugh, I think of a lot of like 1950s and 60s Disney covers where like Donald Duck or Scrooge McDuck is doing something funny involving like money or food or like a balloon, right? And like, it's like Donald's fishing for money, but he's coming up with, I can't explain it, like some gag that shows that he's not fishing well with a fishing rod. I think I'd like one more element in this image.
I'll flick forward to probably the thing that inspired it, which is these memes that were going around for the village people and the Joes. I don't know if you've seen those before, John.
Yeah.
The comic book store that where I shopped for 10 years before I had my own comic book store. For many years, their cash wrap, where you put your stuff to buy, had a piece of glass on it, so they'd have some trading cards or images slid under it, and they had cut out from Diamond Previews. There were those busts of like Flint and Gung Ho and Shipwreck and Zartan, and one of the employees had cut this out and slid it under. And no one's particularly a G.I. Joe fan there. And they'd added a word balloon where they're singing YMCA. And it's funny, but I'm also very protective of Joe when it comes to people poking fun. So I also don't like.
Oh dear. Okay. I found the final one that had dropped out of my slides.
I thought you might be doing it intentionally. So
wow.
Okay, so here's the deal. My two favorite versions of Snake Eyes are Commando version 1, what I had as a kid, and Boy George Snake Eyes. I think that design is absolutely hysterical. It's one of my favorite parts of the cartoon. And so early on, when I started the sketchbook, I started talking to people about doing more silly things with it. And I actually approached Robert Atkins and said, "Hey, Robert, would you do Boy George Snake Eyes?" He's like, "Absolutely not." I'm like, "Come on, it's funny." So this is Matt Slay. Matt is a dear friend, lives on the other side of Virginia. Matt does a lot. He's done a lot of indie work and went to Kubert School, and just an interesting guy. And he's a Joe fan. He got the joke. Like, he thought it was hysterical. Matt tends to not work in colors, and so he actually took my sketchbook home and had it for, I don't know, maybe a month or so. And he just destroyed this. It is coloring, the finger to the. I cannot tell you how much this makes me laugh every time I see it. As far as I know, as I said earlier, I think I'm the only person I know with a spook sketch. I have 2 different Boy George Snake Eyes pieces, and as far as I know, I'm the only person that at least is willing to admit that I have these Boy George Snake Eyes pieces, because I just absolutely adore it. I think it's so funny and of the time, and yeah, I thought when Matt sent me the picture before I saw the sketchbook, I was beside myself. I was so excited. One of my favorite pieces in there. Again, I fully recognize it is not what most people are into. I don't care. I laugh. I think it's silly. And he absolutely, I mean, again, everything about this, I absolutely adore it.
I have not seen Boy George Snake Eyes convention sketches or commissions, but I'm always tickled. I guess twice. I have been tickled both times at JoeCon that I've seen a custom figure, or even better, like a diorama of that whole scene.
I actually, yeah,
what is that episode? Is that episode 15? It's in the 3rd miniseries.
Yes, and it's not close. I actually have a custom classified series Boy George Snake Eyes too. Aaron Detrick, great folks over at Roma Collectibles made it. A friend of mine got it for me, and so yeah, it's the second
silliness. The second instance of me being tickled by this character made real in front of me was James Kavanaugh cosplaying as it at JoeCon 2015 or 2016. I think I have a photo on my blog where I reviewed that convention. This is a really funny image. There's so much I want to say, and yet nothing needs to be said.
Well, again, I will give Robert Atkins grief till the end of time that I don't know why he was so averse to it. Maybe he didn't find it as funny as I did, but we give him a lot of grief about it because, and Matt Slade made a point. He's like, I'll do it. And Matt runs with it. And so every year on Matt's birthday, I send him, there's a picture of Boy George Snake Eyes, like snapping his fingers. And I made a little, meme of it and said, happy birthday. Hope it's fabulous. And I send that to him every year on his birthday. And
John,
got a lot of value.
Can you ease in Robert Atkins? Can you start with a sketch of like satin or of like saxophone rhyming shipwreck? Right?
I tell you what, I actually want from Robert, and I have several pieces in the book. I'm a huge fan of the show Community, and I maintain that Community did more to celebrate the 50th anniversary of G.I. Joe than Hasbro or anybody else did when they put out the G.I. Jeff episode. I want Robert to do Placeholder, which is one of the characters in the jail with just action lines for a face. And Robert has committed to do that at some point for me. So yeah, I'm going to start with that because I've got a couple of Community G.I. Jeff sketches, and yeah, we agreed that some of the back characters in that thing are absolutely hysterical. So we'll start there. You never know. And I have a couple ideas for things I want to do in the next con season. I don't know about this year necessarily, but in the next year or two, satin may be in part of that.
One of the things that as I've gotten older,
because there's definitely something
I've realized I like even more about that scene in that episode where Shipwreck and Snake Eyes and Polly and Timber dress up. I don't remember what issue it is of the Marvel run. It's in the 60s or 70s or 80s numbers, not decades, of course. And someone writes in and says something like, these characters are unrealistic. And it's at a point, I think, when Hama is answering the letters, not Bobby Chase, the editor. They're not signed, but you sort of get the sense that it's Hama. And whoever answers the letter makes the point that people walking around like dressed as Dr. Mindbender in New York City, no one else would bat an eye.
Right.
And right. I think when I read that issue as a kid, I sort of like didn't believe that. It's like, also I didn't at that point see Dr. Mindbender in some of these costumes as overly ostentatious. But Shipwreck and Snake Eyes from that scene in not many parts of the world, but some parts of the world, not unusual at all.
Yeah.
And so I think when that episode played and I was a kid and I saw that, I think I just didn't like the song that Satin sings a song, right? It's like
not great.
It's like was it episode 68 of or 85 of DuckTales when all of a sudden there's a song, right? It's like in season 2 or 3 of DuckTales, someone just decided that suddenly the nephews need to sing a song. It's like, whoa, that hasn't been the rules of this show at all. And it's like Tiny Toon Adventures. It's like, okay, sort of, or Animaniacs from the beginning. Yes. Going off on a tangent, but as a kid, I found them dressing up like that, like silly, but like, okay. And now I just think it's awesome. So John, more sketches like that.
I've got more to share down the road for sure.
Or the is it like Satin's like producer or like her fixer, the guy who sort of has a Major Blood vibe? He's got like a gray trench coat. Him, like clearly he's not Cobra, but he's Cobra adjacent.
Well, I'm glad you appreciate it, Tim, because again, I call it controversial, half in jest, but that tends to be the one people get really surprised by when they look at the book, and a lot of them don't, especially they don't know the cartoon, they don't have any idea why is he dressed that way.
Knowing how many viewers we have and listeners for our podcast, the themes of some of your sketches that you haven't seen elsewhere in convention sketches, I think you might start to see more and more of these as word of your requests and art direction.
Lack thereof
gets out. I think I think Spook and Boy George Snake Eyes together in a single image. I think it's coming. Or sort of mashups, Boy George Spook.
Yeah, Boy George doing a poop on a vamp. All sorts, just
wow.
go.
I don't think I'm going to be asking for that.
Rhyming saxophone shipwreck upset that Polly has just made a mess on a vamp, right? It's like, let me soothe the savage beast with my sax.
Soothe the savage beast. Love it.
Okay. I think I asked this last time. John, do you have a convention you feel like you're most likely to first go back to as the world reopens?
We did talk a little bit about it. It's probably, I think I said Heroes is the one I miss the most. I also miss Baltimore Con. Those are my two favorites. According to what happens, Baltimore tends to be a little easier for me to get to than Heroes. But either one, if I could get to either one of those, I'd be very, very happy.
But no concrete plans.
No concrete plans.
You're not attending Joe Fest in June.
No.
Okay. Where's Joe Fest going to be, Tim? Do you know?
It's Atlanta, isn't it, or somewhere in Georgia?
Atlanta.
Outside Georgia somewhere. Outside,
Okay.
Maybe even Savannah. I'm not even sure.
Okay, I think that's Robert Atkins' neck of the wood, isn't it?
Savannah. Yep.
Very good. Enjoyed that immensely, John. Thanks for coming back on the show.
Thank you.
Good to know that you've still got lots more that you've held back that we can possibly revisit at some point in the future as well. And of course, you're welcome to come back on even just as an audience member and commentator as we look at some more art from various people's collections, which I think we're planning to do over as we progress into the distant future. So yeah, John, where can people find you if they want to find you?
Easiest way is either JonThurmond.com for all things Jon Thurmond, or Twitter is where I share a lot of Joe stuff, and that's going to be at @JoN_Thurmond, THURMOND.
Excellent. And Tim, where can people find you?
Find me at arealamericanbook.com.
Excellent, because apparently there's an archive on the right-hand side of the screen, and it stretches back 8 years, so there's lots of content.
I think the archive is the index tab on the top. But thank you for reminding me to remind. It's not well organized, the index, but it's just sort of chronological. Right? It's like, here's some iceberg drawing that I posted in 2013 or something. I'm no master of WordPress. It's a clean, simple site.
We've got fact correcting Joe coming here. Thanks, Sam.
Thank you.
Augusta is the location. Thanks,
John. Do you have a blank paper or sketchbooks out with artists at this time?
I have. So I just have my sketchbook I showed earlier. I do not send that out anymore. I will be happy to tell you that story offline because, I have a very negative experience with a Joe-related artist that I will tell you once the camera's off. So I've
got a mental guess up here already. Let's see if it's validated.
We'll turn these things off real quick.
we can tease the audience with John's sort of provisional code name, Kid Gloves. Some chatter we did in our previous episode with John, I think before or after the camera was rolling, was that if John were a Joe, he'd be codenamed Kid Gloves, and he's a vehicle driver, and the vehicle is, what were we calling it?
The negotiator.
The negotiator.
The negotiator.
Right? Because of John's profession, how he deals with people, and
this is an example.
And all that stuff.
This may get some art in the future.
Absolutely. Appreciate that.
And
thanks, Kid Gloves.
If you want to find out more about Talking Joe, the place to go to is talkingjoe.co.uk, which has got the links to all of the YouTube videos, the podcasts, the Facebook, the Twitter, Instagram, and Patreon. Thank you to all of us Patreon subscribers who can get things like this episode as an early preview before it gets released out to everybody. And because I struggled so much last time, when all is said and done, you can catch us down the road.
Because we've been talking Joe.
And apparently we're all out of Joe.
Laters.